Hello, everyone. Chuck Northside Guy. Continuing our review of 1933 Goudey. Today I have 6 cards of common players in the low numbers. Recall that the low numbers are actually the more difficult ones in the 1933 Goudey set. And first up today is Jimmy Wilson. Jimmy Wilson was actually a soccer star and began his professional sports career in soccer before transitioning over into baseball, where he was a catcher. In fact, Jimmy was the starting catcher in the 1933 All-Star Game for the National League, and he did that as a member of the Cardinals. Jimmy had one of those interesting Zelig-like careers where he kept appearing in different moments over time. He was a 2-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion. Not really exceptional, but always just kind of hanging around. After his playing days were over, he blended into managerial roles as a player manager, first for the hometown Phillies in 1934 to 1938, and then with the Cubs during the World War II years. As a manager, he amassed a record of 493 wins, 735 losses. So very uninspired career. Jimmy Wilson. Next up, we have Fred Brickell in a PSA 5. Fred was an outfielder in the major leagues for about 7 seasons, played for the Pirates and the Phillies, amassed a lifetime batting average of 281. Not much more you can say about Fred Brickell's playing career, but as a piece of cardboard, I think this is just a really beautiful card. Love that clean, bright red background in the specimen I had before you, as well as just a really great image there. Great card. On the back, you can see, and this is a pretty typical back for a PSA 5 in the low numbers. It's a much darker, weathered, toned back. I don't see that with the Goudeys I have in the higher number, interestingly enough. So I don't know if it's a different paper stock that was used, or I don't know, maybe this is why the low numbers are so difficult. But anyway, there's Fred Brickell in a PSA 5. Next up is Mark Koenig, a member of the famed Murderers Row of the Yankees. He played on that famous 1927 Yankees team. And what you may have heard his name before. He was the last surviving member of Murderers Row before dying in 1993 out in California. He had an interesting career. He got his start and was known as a tenacious batter. In his rookie year, he was at bat 617 times and struck out just 37 times. And yet, he committed the most errors of any player in the American League in that same year. So, awful fielder, great hitter in terms of not striking out. I should note that one of his errors was very famous, and he was widely blamed for an error in the 1926 World Series that cost the Yankees the game against the Cardinals. So, Murderers Row. Here was that batting lineup. It was Earl Combs at number 1, leadoff. Then Mark Koenig. Then Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Bob Musial, and Tony Lazzeri. Think about that lineup. No wonder why it was called Murderers Row. He also had, interestingly enough, he hit a triple and was standing on third base when Babe Ruth hit his milestone 60th home run. So that's a little bit of fun history. And he also appeared as himself in Pride of the Yankees. So some colorful facts there about Mark Koenig, shown here in a PSA 5. Next up, I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's last name. Taylor Dewhead, I'll call him. He played for the Cardinals in those famous 20s teams of the Cards. Played in 13 World Series games. Kind of an unexceptional career beyond that. So let's move beyond him. And next up is Lou Fonseca, PSA 5. Beautiful eggshell blue background. Now, I do have a lot more interesting facts. I think they're interesting about this guy. He was a journeyman player. He was not a power hitter. He hit for for average. And in fact, his lifetime batting average was .316. So he was a good contact hitter. Very limited power, though. In 1929, he won the American League batting title with a .369 batting average. So that's very impressive. But what I thought was interesting when I did a little research on this guy is Lou was the first guy to use film to analyze baseball games and find flaws in players. You know, today with analytics being such a big part of the game, we take that for granted. But this guy was doing this back in the 20s, early 30s. And in World War II, and he, beginning in around 1943, he started working and developing highlight films of the World Series. And he did that from 1943 to 1969. And he edited and narrated a popular series of World Series games. Later on in his career, Fonseca was a batting coach for the Cubs until really quite late in his life. Interesting story about a guy I hadn't heard of before studying him in preparation for this video today. Finally, in today's video, Larry Benton and what I think of as a classic Goudey card. Here at a PSA 5 example, once again. Rather ordinary career, pitcher, 128 wins, 128 losses, 4.03 ERA lifetime. What can I say about Larry Benton? Beyond a gorgeous card, he was the National League's wins leader. While pitching for the Giants in 1928, he had 25 wins. So that's all for today's video. I hope everybody is staying safe, staying healthy, focusing on the things that matter, and finding time also for enjoying their cards and other personal delights like that. Take care. More to come.